Flight MH17. Malaysia Airlines Flight MH17 was on its way from Amsterdam to Kuala Lumpur on July 17th when it was shot down over eastern Ukraine, killing all 298 people on board. The Boeing 777-200 was flying at 33,000 feet when it suddenly disappeared from radar screens. Communication with the crew resumed normally until 13:20 UTC, but was lost minutes later as the aircraft exploded mid-air. The witnesses explained the scene as hearing a loud bang and then seeing debris being rained down on the ground. Investigations revealed that a radar-guided Buk missile fired from the separatist-held territory in Ukraine brought down the plane. The warhead detonated just feet from the cockpit, sending shrapnel through the fuselage, killing the crew instantly and causing the aircraft to explode into ashes mid-flight. Although the missile was traced back to Russia, both the separatists and the Russian government denied responsibility. The conflict in the region between Russian-backed separatists and Ukrainian forces complicated the investigation. Despite the evidence, including intercepted communications and video footage, the motive behind the attack remains unclear. Was it a tragic mistake or deliberate act? The world is still searching for an answer. Flight 981. FlyDubai Flight 981 crashed on March 19, 2016, while attempting to land at Rostov-on-Don Airport, Russia, killing all 62 people on board. The Boeing 737-800 departed Dubai and was scheduled to land at 5:10 a.m. However, severe weather conditions, including strong winds and low visibility, delayed and complicated the process. After 2 failed attempts, the pilots decided to make a third attempt without considering the surrounding conditions. As a result, the attempt did not just fail, but proved to be fatal. The aircraft fell and crashed 1 mile short off the runway. However, investigations revealed a strange and shocking reality. The pilots were tired due to insufficient rest before the flight and lacked the proper training to handle strong winds or difficult weather conditions. Captain Aristos Socrates had less than 6,000 hours of flying experience, whereas the co-pilot Alejandro Cruz Alav possessed under 5,800 hours of flying. Skeptics believe this lack of experience led the pilots to make wrong decisions that were worsened when the plane's autothrottle system malfunctioned terribly, compromising engine power and ultimately leading to a crash. Flight 302. On March 10, 2019, Ethiopian Airlines Flight 302 tragically crashed just 6 minutes after takeoff from Addis Ababa, killing all 157 people on board. This disaster came shortly after a similar crash of another Boeing 737 MAX, thus raising concerns regarding the aircraft's safety. The plane took off smoothly, and for a few minutes, everything was going according to plan until the plane's angle of attack sensor malfunctioned and gave inaccurate readings, which triggered the MCAS, or Maneuvering Characteristics Augmentation System. This system was designed to prevent stalls by automatically pushing the nose down, but it malfunctioned during the flight. The pilot struggled to regain control as the aircraft entered a sharp dive. Panicked, the crew disabled the electric trim system, which prevented them from easily adjusting the stabilizer, making recovery nearly impossible. As they fought to maintain control, the MCAS activated again, sending the plane into a fatal fall. In the end, the plane crashed into a field at nearly 700 miles per hour and left a massive crater in its wake. The investigations revealed multiple design flaws and one common question: how was this aircraft permitted to fly? Flight 708. West Caribbean Airways Flight 708 crashed on August 16, 2005, killing all 160 people on board. A series of critical errors caused the tragedy. Before takeoff, the crew failed to consider severe weather along the flight path and flew an overly ambitious cruising altitude of 35,000 feet, which exceeded the McDonnell Douglas MD-82 safe limits under its weight and configuration. After departing from Panama City, the pilots turned on the engine anti-ice systems, reducing engine power, but soon received clearance to climb to 33,000 feet. With anti-ice on, the engines couldn't generate enough energy to reach that altitude safely. To compensate, Captain Ospina ordered the system turned off, and the plane leveled off at 33,000 feet. But when ice buildup became a concern again, the pilots re-engaged the anti-ice systems. This decision caused the plane's speed to decrease slowly, a problem compounded when the autothrottle failed to maintain sufficient power. Distracted by other tasks, including receiving dessert, the pilots did not notice the dangerous loss of airspeed. The aircraft stalled, plummeting into the mountains of Venezuela. Investigations revealed that poor situational awareness, mismanagement of the anti-ice systems, and failure to respond to critical warnings were key factors in the crash. Flight 254. On September 3, 1989, VARIG Flight 254, a Boeing 737-200, became one of Brazil's most tragic aviation incidents due to a critical navigation mistake. During the flight from Maraba to Belém, Captain Cesar Garcés mistakenly entered a heading of 270 degrees instead of the correct 027 degrees, sending the plane westward into the Amazon rainforest. Despite noticing anomalies, such as the inability to contact Belém's control tower, the crew did not verify their position using available navigation systems. After over 3 hours of flight, the aircraft ran out of fuel, forcing a crash landing in the dense jungle. The survivors faced dire conditions, including extreme temperatures and threats from the jungle's wildlife while waiting for rescue. The plane was equipped with a beacon light that would alert the rescuers of its whereabouts. However, the beacon light could only be activated if the plane was underwater, so the captain urinated on it to activate it. After 2 days, a rescue team located the survivors. However, 11 people, including a crew member, lost their lives in the process. Flight 371. Tarom Flight 371 remains Romania's deadliest plane crash, which basically occurred because of a tragic technical malfunction and human error that claimed the lives of all 60 people on board. On March 31, 1995, the Airbus A310 took off from Bucharest's Otopeni International Airport, heading for Brussels. Moments after takeoff, engine number 1 malfunctioned due to a known issue with the automatic throttle system that caused the engine to pause unexpectedly during the climb. As the plane took off over 2,000 feet, Captain Liviu Bătănoiu, an experienced pilot, was occupied with other tasks, leaving the first officer to manage the situation. Unfortunately, the captain failed to respond to his co-pilot's prompts, and the first officer quickly realized something was wrong with the captain's health. Struggling to fly the plane alone, he activated the autopilot. However, the aircraft's angle steepened dangerously due to cloud cover, making it difficult for the first officer to realize the plane was in trouble. With the ATS malfunction intensifying, the aircraft began a fatal roll and entered into a sharp nosedive. Despite desperate efforts to regain control, the plane crashed near a railway station, killing everyone aboard. Investigators later confirmed that the ATS issue, known by Airbus and logged in the aircraft's maintenance records, was a key factor in the disaster. Flight MF8667. The story of Xiamen Flight MF8667 is one that perfectly captures just how much could go wrong in aviation due to negligence of a factor as slight as weather conditions or perhaps a few bad decisions. On August 16, 2018, Boeing 737-85C was en route from Xiamen, China to Manila, Philippines, when it skidded off the runway and landed in severe rainstorms at Ninoy Aquino International Airport. Despite the left engine and landing gear being torn off and significant damage to the aircraft, no serious injuries occurred among the 165 passengers and crew. The investigation found that the captain had ignored multiple warnings, from the first officer to abort the landing despite poor visibility and the lack of high-intensity centerline lights on the runway. The crash not only disturbed flights for over 36 hours, causing more than 200 cancellations and affecting 250,000 travelers, but it also led to an urgent overview of the policies on runway safety and pilot decision-making. The pilot and first officer in charge of the aircraft were prohibited from leaving the country until the investigation was complete. However, they shortly found their way around the law and escaped. Flight 185. SilkAir Flight 185, a scheduled flight from Jakarta to Singapore on December 19, 1997, tragically crashed into Indonesia's Mauzi River, killing all 104 people aboard. The cause of the crash remains one of the most controversial debates in aviation history, with conflicting conclusions from different investigative bodies. The Indonesian National Transportation Safety Committee stated that the cause of the crash could not be determined due to insufficient evidence. However, the United States National Transportation Safety Board suggested that the sudden steep dive was likely due to deliberate actions by the captain, Su Wei Ming, after analyzing data from the flight's black boxes and flight controls. The NTSB investigation results fueled multiple theories, the popular one being the pilot's suicide attempt, especially given that he was suffering from financial troubles and disciplinary issues and that his coincidental insurance policy was taken shortly before the crash. However, a Singaporean investigation found no evidence of suicidal intent. Meanwhile, An alternate theory involving a potential rudder malfunction similar to earlier Boeing 737 incidents was also debated but ruled out. Ultimately, the story of SilkAir Flight 185 was left a mystery to be debated, and despite a decade having passed, people are still figuring out if it was a suicide attempt or a malfunction that claimed so many lives. Flight 7908. Caspian Airlines Flight 7908 operated a Tupolev Tu-154M, first built in 1987. Initially serving Afghanistan's Bakhtar Airlines, the aircraft was later sold to Caspian Airlines in 1998. Registered as EPCPG, it underwent a safety check in June 2009 and was cleared to fly until 2010. On July 15, 2009, 16 minutes after taking off from Tehran Amman Khomeini International Airport, the aircraft's tail caught fire due to engine failure. Despite the pilot's efforts to land safely, the plane crashed into a field near Janatabad, Iran, creating a crater and killing all 168 passengers and crew. Investigations revealed that fatigue failure in the left engine's rotor disc caused it to disintegrate. Fragments severed hydraulic systems and fuel lines, starting a fire. The fire destroyed essential controls, leaving the pilot unable to regain control. Tupolev had issued a service bulletin addressing rotor issues, but it had not been received internationally before the crash. The crash led to widespread mourning, with both Iranian and Armenian presidents offering condolences. A day of mourning was declared in Armenia. The incident became the fourth deadliest aviation crash in Iran, leading to increased attention to aviation safety and better communication of critical technical updates. Flight 603. Aeroperú Flight 603 was a regularly scheduled flight operating a Boeing 757-23A, just 3 years old at the time of the crash. The plane was leased multiple times before ending up with Aeroperú in 1995. The flight was manned by Captain Eric Schreiber, who had over 22,000 flight hours, and First Officer David Fernandez, who had 8,000 hours. Despite this experienced crew, the fate of the flight would be tragically determined by a tiny piece of adhesive tape. On October 2, 1996, shortly after taking off from Lima, Flight 603 began receiving contradictory emergency messages from its instruments. Altitude, speed, and pressure readings were incorrect, confusing the crew. The aircraft stalled multiple times while flying over the Pacific Ocean at night with no visual references. Believing they were still high in the sky, the plane climbed down too fast and eventually crashed into the ocean, killing all 70 passengers and crew members on board. Investigators revealed a shocking cause. Adhesive tape had been left over the static ports of the aircraft after cleaning. This tape blocked critical readings, misleading the pilots throughout the flight. The tape should have been removed before departure, but an Aeroperú employee had forgotten, leading to the tragic crash.